Therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy shit moment? My therapist called me out on this a couple weeks ago. I was worried about my internship at school and the lady running it told me that she was really lucky to have me working for her. When I mentioned this to my therapist, I told her that I wasn't sure if she really meant it or if she was just saying it to make me feel better. She told me, I know you're probably not used to getting positive feedback in your life, but know that she didn't have to say what she did. She said it because she meant it. Double quote. She's right. I'm not used to positive feedback and it can make me uncomfortable. But sometimes you need to give yourself the credit you deserve for the hard work you're doing. During my training I was asked how would you feel if a client were to come to you and admitted they were a pedophile that was on the edge of committing seriously horrific acts? Could you see that person as another human being that needed help? Or were your personal feelings about the abhorrent behavior too strong? This factor leads some people to not continue my course on to the next level. But it really illustrates the level of non-judgment needed in this field. We all have our own personal feelings, of course, but these get talked about in supervision. Edit. Wow, thanks for the awards. I'm glad it's raised an interesting topic for discussion. I'm enjoying reading them all, even if I don't have the time to reply. Personally, in this instance I remember the Gandhi quote, hate the sin, not the sinner. Also spelling. Therapist here. To piggyback on what others have said, it is highly unlikely for me to have moments where I judge my clients. It happens sometimes, but I'm able to shut down those thoughts quickly in my head and return to being present for the people I see. People are so incredibly complex that my judgment wouldn't have any meaning anyway and it doesn't have a place in our work together. I will admit though, something that does get me feeling a little salty is when I have a client's parent that attempts to sabotage the therapeutic relationship I have with their child. Or pulling them out of therapy entirely when some of the things we talk about challenges some potentially unhealthy family dynamics. I don't feel anger toward the parents. Mostly I feel bad for the kid. Edit. Whoa. All I have to say is that I am incredibly humbled by all of you that have shared your stories. Even though these moments are so steeped in pain. What hits me is the incredible amount of strength present in spite of the upbringing and parents many of you have had. When I was underage, I got caught with a drink on Bourbon Street and got a minor in possession. I was telling my therapist about it, and said that the police caught me with a hand grenade in New Orleans. He didn't realize that a hand grenade was a type of drink. And it was funny to watch him try to process that his patient might have just casually told him that he had been caught with a fragmentation grenade. He took a big long pause, and said, "Where did you even find a grenade?" Double quote. I realized the misunderstanding quickly and corrected him. But for a moment he definitely was thinking, holy shit, how do I deal with this? Double quote. I'll never judge someone, especially someone who has come to me hurting. The world is full of assholes already. That said, I found out while I was still doing internships that I'm very uncomfortable working with abusers. So I don't do it. It took one recount of a man describing in detail how he was strangling his wife up against a wall and making her look at the beam he was gonna hang her from. I got out of the office and told my supervisor I just couldn't do it. It's worth mentioning, I was just an observer back then. I didn't act as the therapist. My supervisor was. She wanted me to be prepared to work not only with victims, but with victimizers as well. Not a judgment, you kind of train your brain not to judge. Because you are seeking to understand and help. When you do those things, you can't simultaneously judge. We could all use a little more of that in real life, I suppose. I'll share this though. I do feel concerned about this recent phenomenon of young people I worked with self-diagnosing, sharing, and identifying very closely with mental illness. As if the pendulum quickly swung from never ever share your feelings till OMG. You're depressed? All of us are too. Life's challenges can be tough and they don't need a scientific sounding label to be valid and real. You are not your diagnosis. We can find validation and support in healthier ways. Edit. Thank you for the golden awards. And thanks to everyone for some really nice discussion. Clinical psychologist working primarily in forensics here. This means my clients are usually involved in legal proceedings, family court, juvenile court, criminal court, etc. My job is usually to evaluate or provide treatment. I'm not there to judge. That's the judge's job. But of course I have my thoughts. I am usually impressed by the justifications people make for shitty behavior. The one that irks me the most is when parents manipulate their child against the other parent. I've had to do therapy for a 5-year-old who said she doesn't want to see a parent because they haven't paid child support. Excuse me? What 5-year-old knows, understand, or needs to be worried about child support? Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she cancelled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy. Which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. Can I answer from the other side? I had something close to a mental breakdown after a painful breakup. Started seeing a therapist. It was going more or less well. At one point I had a sort of revelation about all my bullshit and about my own responsibility in the whole mess. So next session I'm actually thrilled to share this with the therapist. About how I finally see a bunch of my own problems in the way I interact with women. And which caused a relationship that wasn't really healthy from the get-go. I'm halfway through trying to explain this and the therapist goes, "Oh. You know. Women are weird." So that was that. I never went back. FCK that guy. I was once in my psychiatrist's office monthly. 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders, aunt and 2 uncles, I was guardian conservator for had died one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack. My daughter attempted suicide. And my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with a therapist in the office next to her and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so f'd up. I had no idea. I think she saved my life. I feel like a lot of the comments saying that they never judge their clients might be working in voluntary services or they've been very fortunate in their client base. Judgment isn't an inherently bad thing. It's how we know that murdering people is wrong. So when a convicted pedophile client told me, "Nothing gets me going like a pair of little girls' worn panties," you better believe I judged the FCK out of him. I continued to work with him and I treated him with compassion and respect because he is a human being worthy of both. I did my job because I'm a professional. But I can't honestly say that I didn't judge him. I judge that he should never be around children. I judge that he is not yet ready for change. I judge that his access to his own daughter should be closely supervised. That's a lot of judgments. Understanding your own inherent biases and how they influence your work is a very important part of training and practice. I work in healthcare and I've never heard a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist judge patients openly. Other nurses and doctors. On the other hand, holy shit. At some of the clinics I've been in, the conversations in the break room and at the nurses station blew my mind. That's why I don't work in a hospital anymore. I was a PCA and the judgment from everyone was insane. Nurses would wait until the last possible minutes to give a patient their pain meds because they were exaggerating, and yet I would be in their room 3 times an hour and they would be writhing in pain. People openly talked about patients badly. It was horrible. Too many goddamn responsible professionals. I came here to read the salacious stories of how some docs went ham on patients and lost their certifications. Instead, all I've gained is even more respect than I already had for the back-breaking and sometimes thankless hard work these individuals do every day. Work I could never do. Not with any consistency anyway. Responsible jerks. OP. You mentioned you're getting ready to start therapy. I know we're different. But therapy was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. It's good to have a neutral third party weigh in on what troubles you. And remember, you don't have to stay with a therapist if you don't want. Therapy, like any psychological treatment, is often more about trial and error to find what works for the individual than anything. Also, you'll get out of it what you put in. So be upfront, frank and honest with your therapist. That will help them work with you on determining the best therapy course for you. I wish you the best of luck. Once had a patient whose wife shook their baby to death. He wanted help reconnecting with his wife. At the time I was a young father of a newborn myself. And he triggered a lot of fear in me for my own child. A deep loathing of his spouse. And pity, the how pathetic kind, for the patient. I tried for 3 sessions. Met his spouse and everything before handing the case over to my supervisor, who knew about my initial reactions. And tried to help me through it. Unfortunately, it ended up being more about my feelings than his. And I was new to the profession at the time. These things are expected to crop up from time to time. But I was still taken aback by my own reactions. Well, I quit my last therapist because I made him cry uncontrollably. He tried not to, but he just couldn't hold it back. I felt guilty and won't see him anymore. I think he may have lost a child before. I described watching my aunt grieve over her son's body. I felt so much pain losing him. But was explaining how watching my aunt was dramatically worse. The details about her is what made him lose it. I could tell he was reliving something inside his own head. Not a therapist but a patient. Me and my fiance, at the time, went in to see if we could figure out how to make things work after he hit me. After our history came out and I divulged his infidelity etc, the therapist basically said no. There's no hope. You need to get help for yourself so you can get the courage to leave and end this. I was angry at the time but both therapists knew there was no point as he was as screwed up as it gets. I've never judged my patients. My co-workers however. I've judged the shit out of those. I'm also judging the hell out of myself for picking up smoking again. But my patients? Never. Still hasn't happened yet. 25 years in. I don't judge. Not while in session. Not while I'm working with clients. And I've worked with bestiality, incest, rape, murder, psychosis, delusions, NPD and BPD. Edit. A letter. I do acute pediatric inpatient behavioral therapy. Has never happened with a child. And never will. Parents on the other hand can be real pieces of shit. And the way they abuse their children then throw them off on us and scream fix them. I'm a big burly guy and I've cried many nights over this. The F-King monster said that he liked to dip his Oreos in ketchup and mustard. I called the police who called the FBI who called the CIA who called the Mafia who called Robocop who called Rambo who eventually captured this demon who is now on death row. His death sentence has been postponed 6 times because the executioners are too scared to be near him. Rumor is that we have transmitted a radio signal into outer space, calling for extraterrestrial help so that we may rid the universe of this filth. We haven't had any replies yet. God help us. I saw a new therapist that specializes in addiction, so he knows how to read the patient. And we laughed about it. But I told him my typical alcohol intake back. And he just went holy shit, how are you not dead? Results incoming. They're trying to not do a liver biopsy if not necessary cause I guess that has some nasty side effects. But we had a good laugh about that. He looked at my charts and was like, dude, you passed street tests at 42? I don't know how I'm alive. Not a proud time of my life. I joined in a review of a secluded patient and he threw a cup of wee and poo in my face when we opened the door. I tried to be objective about his experience but I just thought, what a cunt. I work in inpatient services so it can be hard to challenge myself at times. Individuals with diagnosis of personality disorder, for example, can do things that in isolation make you think they're just being bratty or manipulative. But to think of the experiences that shape them to react like that in a given situation can help to clear my judgment and find compassion. Harder when someone bites me or hits me with one of our fabulously detachable anti-ligature curtain poles. Though. QMHPAC. Soon to be LPC resident. Also. TW for sexual abuse. No shade to OP. But I wish the question was. Mental health professionals, MHP. What has surprised you the most about human behavior? Because most MHPs really don't judge clients for what they say. But we do have holy shit moments. I'd say for me, my holy shit moment was when I realized just how prevalent sexual abuse in childhood is, and that sexual abuse is most often perpetuated by an immediate family member, e.g. parent, sibling, aunt, uncle, grandparent. So whenever I hear people say they don't believe so and so's story about being sexually abused by their parent, grandparent, etc. because that doesn't happen, it irks the shit out of me, to put it lightly. I work with kiddos who have experienced some kind of abuse trauma. 90% of my clients have been sexually abused. I have a lot of holy shit moments, but not from judgment of my clients but from what happened to them. I've had clients whose father made them help him dismember mom's body after dad murdered her in front of them. I've had clients under the age of 8 who have been sex trafficked. I've had clients who have been forced to film torture porn. I have holy shit moments all the time. The wife and I went through marriage counseling there for a bit. I told the counseling the wife always had a tone. The wife replies, I don't have a f-king tone. The counseling looked at the wife and said, you kind of do lol. Wife laughed it off and said, okay, maybe a little bit, but damn. A week later, when the counselor and I had our one-on-one session, she stated she wasn't supposed to judge, but in that moment she could see why I said in a previous session the wife can sometimes come off as a royal bitch. Obligatory, not a therapist, and this will probably get buried. But as a Yano man, I really struggled with going to therapy. But it was the absolute low point in my life. And I have always dealt with depression, but I come from the just get through it mentality. Well, I was closer and closer to not getting through it. I remember the first time I told my therapist that I was planning on killing myself. I expected the same reaction that men showing their emotions and vulnerabilities get. But she never did. Never even acted like it wasn't an option. She just talked me through it. Never acting like my thoughts or feelings were invalid. Sorry. Not exactly the point of the question. But if fear of being judged or anything is holding you back from going, please go. It could save your life. Guy assaulted his wife and then told me he didn't and she was lying. However, he later told me that they were having relationship problems because he didn't feel that she should be able to refuse him sex since they were married. I found out after the fact the wife had also reported to police he had sexually assaulted her as well. This was 5+ years ago in the South, so sadly not uncommon. But it was his lack of remorse or any acknowledgement of wrongdoing and breezy way of bringing this up that was really upsetting. Therapist in training here. I haven't even started working with clients yet. But I love the way therapists are responding to this question with legit empathy and care for their clients. That's how I hope to be when I start working with people. Commenting from the opposite viewpoint of this. I have quite severe OCD. With the counselor before my current one, I was just starting to open up about some really embarrassing obsessions. I told him about it. And he laughed. While I was being vulnerable. And nearly in tears. He did try to cover it with a cough. But failed. After that it took over 2 years before I reached out to another therapist. I feel like if you're judging a client, you shouldn't be a therapist. Because you'll cause more harm than good. This will never get read, so I can say this. I gave my therapist a moment my last session. We were speaking about my younger years and I told her something and she sat straight up and said holy shit. It was a holy shitty moment, but it led to a breakthrough. She's a hell of a great therapist.